So you can see from the little red light that went on above us, this event's being recorded and it might be posted in the future on a public forum. So if you would prefer your image or your voice not be accessible publicly in that way, then use your black screen or mute your mic, most of which are already muted. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to this special iteration of our CoLAverse discussion series. I'm Linda Dove, a faculty member in the College of Liberal Arts here at Woodbury, as well as its events coordinator, so I'm responsible for leading the co-curricular programming arm of the college. And I say special because tonight we're actually co-hosting this event with one of the university's newest co-curricular platforms, which is the Black Intellectual Groundworks, which is also known by its acronym BIG, B-I-G, which is the brainchild of our moderator this evening, Dr. Rasen Venceslavov. I'll let him tell you more about it, but this is the first event, this is for them, and so we're very happy to be able to partner in this way. And so Rasen will be introducing our featured artist, Austin Rich, in just a minute, as he collaborated with Austin in the weeks leading up to the performance of Stay Sane. And that led to some of the formation of its key components, but I'll let them tell you about that. So by way of introducing Rasen, I wanted to mention that part of the background materials that we provided for this event this evening was a copy of his review of Austin's performance, which is an essay entitled The Importance of Pandas. It's since been published in the arts journal Tripwire. If you haven't had a chance to read it yet, I would urge you to do so. Rasen is a brilliant writer. Last summer, Rasen shared the essay with me in a draft. And I remember when I got the email and I saw the title of the document, The Importance of Pandas, and I think I replied back immediately without even opening up the file or reading a word of the essay, something like, I already know it's going to be great because of the title. And that quirkiness and irreverence is a hallmark of what makes his writing special. But it's also very, very smart, because the question of what the importance of pandas is to Austin is a question that haunts the entire review, and it's ultimately never answered. And this absence of an answer is actually what the review is about. Probably a better label for it than review is non-review or even unreview, since Rasen never actually attended the performance and can't and doesn't offer a description of it in the essay. It's a hole in the middle of the piece, but the presence of absence, the absence of presence is in fact the essay's main concern, particularly as it attends to the Black body in public spaces, which is where Rasen takes us as the writing unfolds. That essay also introduced me to the work of T.K. Smith, who's here tonight. We already said hi, but he also was involved in our CoLAverse last August. So I hope we'll hear a little bit more about that central concern of the essay, which is the Black body in public space. Ultimately, the essay's formal absence is the way that it defies your expectations of what you think you're supposed to be getting in a review, meld with its substantive content, its preoccupations with a Black body that is both too present and too absent. And it's really worth your time to read. So if you haven't read it yet, it's available on the landing page, and so you can read it later. So thank you, Rasen, for bringing this experience to us tonight and introducing us to the work and the person of Austin Rich. And I will now turn it over to you.
Woohoo! Wow. I love hearing about myself from my good friends, because it's always inflationary, and it makes me sound as if I'm already a monument of a person rather than one. But that gets us into the topic of dance and into the topic of embodiment generally. So T.K. Smith was one of the inspiration, as we said, and we're so lucky to have him here. But of course, Austin is the person of the hour. I've known Austin for a good 4 or 5 years, maybe now. I was lucky to attend his graduation dance performance at the Gloria Kaufman School of Dance at USC. I've seen him perform in all kinds of contexts, mostly in public spaces, actually. So it's, you know, one of the questions I hope we can tackle later. And you know, he comes from Smyrna, Georgia, where he's located right now. So woo, Smyrna! Before we go into the actual film of the performance that I did not see, I repeat, I did not see the performance I ended up writing about. So it'll be lovely now because I'm filling in the blanks for myself also. I've watched already the film, but for all of you, it'll be a new experience, and I promise you it'll be visceral and important, and I hope you stick through it. It's about 10 minutes. It's a genius piece of filmmaking also, but of course, you know, the dance and choreography is the main event. We're gonna have a discussion with Austin after, but before we do this, I wanted to say a little bit about the context of how the, you know, performance and the piece of writing that I eventually published came about. So at the start of quarantine last year, Austin and I were in touch, and part of this was, you know, just the mutual care that emerged as a necessity and urgency in what was an unforeseeable crisis for all of us. And we were in touch, and we would just chat. And then eventually we decided that, you know, it's safe enough to, you know, if we're all messed up and everything, to see each other every once in a while. And part of that seeing each other was, well, he was already thinking about how he could be creative in that context. And he was already cooking up ideas. And I became a sort of a facilitator. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a producer because it sounds like a dirty word to me. But certainly someone who was there to facilitate and to help out. We drove with my car, and most of it is described actually in the piece of writing. But it ended up being a performance that I couldn't see because he scheduled it out of personal urgency on a night or evening that I couldn't, you know, attend. So that, of course, did not remove any of the importance for me or any of the emotional resonance. In fact, it teased out of me a piece of writing, which has subsequently been published. I'm really grateful to the journal Tripwire because I mean, who publishes an art review of something you didn't see, right? I mean, it's as Linda was saying, there's a paradox in the middle of that piece of writing. All very fitting, of course, for the context of discombobulation that we've all been living in the past 1 year, but also on a broader scale, the sense of civilizational crisis that we've been experiencing in terms of social justice and the lack thereof. I wanted to, before we start the movie, also thank Linda, of course. She's facilitating today. She's been running the CoLA series. Rachel Farnsworth behind the scenes, and also Lisa Cooper. These are our administrators at the College of Liberal Arts. And then I wanted to say briefly what the BIG was. So the BIG is Black Intellectual Groundworks, was a project that I started almost a year ago now, which is an initiative, ongoing initiative. So it does not have an expiration date, of enriching the curriculum and the co-curricular offerings at the university in honor of the Black scholarly and cultural tradition. So we're acquiring books, we're inviting speakers, and we kick it off tonight with, you know, a dance performance of sorts, because we're watching the movie of it, but then we get to talk to the artist after. So stick around, we're gonna play the movie. It's about 10 minutes, right? 11, something like that. And let us know if you can, of course, see it, you know, drop a line in the chat to make sure that you know, the tech is working. And then we'll come back and talk to Austin.
Yeah, it's 12 minutes. So I'm going to share my screen now. And hopefully everybody can see a black screen, and I'm going to start the movie.
Chains while I'm on the road. It ain't the same, had to let her know. The pain stay still, but I made a goal. Taking chances, breaking fast when the sun go. Papa let his sun go. Might walk slow, different angles. Know the light close. We was dancing under halos. We was singing. Stress got me on the tightrope. I be pacing. Mind clear through the smoke in the basement. I'ma keep my soul when the devil show faces. Levels if you ain't know the stages. Mama say slow down. Papa need to slow down. Venom trying to hold down. All I see is God's round burning sage. Freedom on my shirt like I know the way. Breathe with me. Getting tight, bold now. You can chill with me. For real. Chill. Trying to set my mind at ease. Fuck a pill. Time on repeat. Still blood on the leaves. Pour water, see the tree grow. Running with my king so I can see the crown he can never see. Auntie watching over me. Pray for me. Pray for a nigga. Praying for my niggas. Laying with a queen. Money rule everything. Trying to stay clean. Purity. Looking for the cure. Look up to the Lord. She looking just like my girl. Peace, give me more. Shawty got the force. What more can I endure? High vibrate. Trying to stay sane. Some on the train. Faith on my brain. Faith on my brain. Some on the train. Trying to stay sane. Trying to stay sane. Trying to stay sane.
That's it.
Well, so back to regular programming. I love watching this, and imagine me missing out on it, right? So to me, this is the document. There's a line of cars, so it's probably, I don't know, 11 cars at least. And this is an audience that Austin chose for himself and invited specifically to witness this. And of course, it was illegal, which we said in all the promotional materials for this session. I wanted to read a short 2 paragraphs from the piece that I wrote for that journal, and then we're going to turn to Austin. I have the big question I have to ask him has to do with public space, because as I said, I've seen him perform a lot in public space. One thing I didn't say about him, which bears saying, is that he's very accomplished, actually formidably accomplished for anyone his age. He's worked with luminaries as Solange, also known as Beyonce's sister, William Forsythe and Sabella Grimes and so forth. Which is why we dropped his website also in the chat, so you guys can use it as reference. So bear with me, I'm reading out just 2 short paragraphs. This is kind of like to set the stage for our conversation. And it also sets the context for me for what that performance meant in that moment culturally, and how I understood it, and how I started thinking about it. On April 16, 2020, a public space could witness nothing more daring, more poetic, and more viscerally human than a black man's dancing body. Austin's performance defied not just the quarantine interdiction, but also the histories of surveillance, policing, and carceral violence that gave such interdictions teeth. The word quarantine etymologically refers to the 40 days Jesus Christ fasted. The 40 days a 1520s English widow was allowed to remain in her deceased husband's home. or the 40 days a ship from a disease-stricken country was kept off the Venetian port in the 17th century. On the 40th day after Austin performed Stay Sane in Los Angeles, in Minneapolis, a black man by the name of George Floyd was brutally murdered on camera by white police officer Derek Chauvin. Counting backwards, around the time Austin danced his way down the back alley between 7th Place and Violet, Floyd's girlfriend, Courtney Ross, had unwittingly commenced her last 40 days of having her lover by her side. The burden of quarantine is always in the future tense, counting from the moment Jesus entered the desert. An English woman was widowed, or a freighter dropped anchor. But if one lived every moment on the edge of precarity, as Black people in the United States have always done, every next 40-day period is a potential quarantine. I guess that's probably enough of a heady message from me in my piece of writing. Well, let's turn it on to Austin. So first of all, Austin, welcome. I'd love to hear your voice and stop hearing mine already. Please tell me about public space, because you are so enamored with it, you have a way with it, and you also reconfigure it through dancing. How do you do it? Why do you feel compelled to?
First, thank you so much, Rossin and Linda, for having me, and everyone who's here. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm grateful. Public space for me is, just to be honest, at first it's awkward, because we're interacting with people who we, may know or we won't, or something is always possible. So there's always this sense of like, okay, what can happen? But on the second side, it's just interesting because there's already a choreography how we interact, and being like a dancer studying movement, public space is a place where, as a dancer, there's a different side of you. So I've always been interested in bringing that dancer side of me, or choreographer or whatever, into public space, just to shake it up, just show a different perspective of, the flash mob. It can be also, beautiful or ugly movement in that sort of same energy of, flash mob at a mall, or like, a wedding, dance. I want to, just present other ways that movement can be in public space.
All right, you guys, please, anybody who has a question, there's a lot of technical questions about how this performance was put together, how it was filmed, and I know Marty had a burning one, which he asked a couple of days ago in a different meeting. I don't want to put you on the spot, Marty.
Yeah, it's still burning. No. Very affecting film there, Austin, and performance. And then your writing, Rossin, was also excellent. And in context of what Linda, in her helping translate some of something in your writing I didn't get on the absence of presence, I think maybe I start to see some answers to my question, but I'll get right to it. It's being promoted as an illegal dance performance, or part of the promotion that I heard from Rossin was that way. And so I was just wondering if the performance would have had the same significance were it not done during the shutdown. As I say, I'm beginning to see some of this, but I also saw the director's cut of your performance, where you have the long, where we really see an absence of anything in Los Angeles. You're going through the alleys and everything. But anyway, that is the question, though. The significance, would it have had the same significance if it were done pre-shutdown, without a shutdown?
To answer that, I honestly don't believe this piece would exist without the shutdown. I had an idea as far as like movement ideas with the Heelys, that sort of section. I've always wanted to dance with those. But as far as me wanting to do this piece, I don't think it would exist if we didn't shut down or had gone through this. So yeah, I think the idea never would have came across. I love driving movies. I love, you know, cars and stuff, but I didn't see this as a possibility if we weren't, you know, told to stay inside.
That's sounds like a logistical possibility. It also seems like there's an artistic reason, you know, behind it. But
Yeah. Also, just I guess as far as presenting goes, I'm always trying to challenge myself with where dances can exist. And I know this isn't the first time dance has been shown on the streets, but I'm always interested in, you know, going away from, okay, you know, I've danced in a club, or I've danced in my laundry room, or I've danced in my room. I've you know, danced sitting down. I'm always just like, okay, can I do it this way? Can I not do it this way? So as far as the artistic choice goes, it's just, I'm really trying to beat my own self as far as where can dance exist in my mind. So that's kind of also the second sort of half of that.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'd urge anyone who has a question to unmicrophone themselves and start talking, or drop a line in the chat. We're all friends. And actually, we're all fans of Austin. So here's the fan club. That's what it looks like, Austin. It's bigger, but you know, this is a little sliver of it.
I have my hand up, so I guess I'll go. Thank you. Austin, great job. Congratulations. I look forward to checking out your website and seeing more of your performance. Rawson, great piece you wrote. Thank you. It was really, really moving. And Linda, thank you for sponsoring all this. So Austin, I was just moved into two parts of the performance. One was, seemed like a far off, very distant figure of someone in a wheelchair who was sort of engaging with you. I wasn't quite sure whether that was like someone who was trying to choreograph what you were doing or following you, or you just sort of encountered that person and then that person just faded away. And I was really sort of struck by that encounter. And the second thing was your lighting, I guess it was a Bunsen burner or some kind of fire that, you know, jumped out. So I'm just wondering the symbolism of both of those.
Yes, thank you so much for those questions. There was, so in that community, I mean, in Los Angeles, there's a homeless, you know, situation going on. So before the performance and even our time that Rawson and I spent, you know, scouting the spot out, we met up with people around the community. And, you know, I didn't want to also just show up, you know, I kind of am in a different position where I can even, you know, believe, hey, I can dance in the city and then go right back home, you know, so we acknowledge that. But that guy who came with the wheelchair, he just kind of came across, you know, the performance, and then at first I was kind of slowing down my movement because, you know, I was being respectful of the space. And he was approaching me, you know, saying things, but he eventually just stopped and watched and then, you know, left. And I was respectful of that. And he ends up becoming a part of the performance. And, you know, I kept that and I respected it. And I honestly love that you can see that. So yeah, it was just very respectful. And there's a lot of like art around that space anyways, like street art. And there's a community that I've done a lot of work there. So I spoke with the guys there, met them, and did my thing, and they were cool for all of that. And I believe he might have been someone as well, but I didn't get to meet him at the time. So yeah, that became a part of the performance, and, you know, just out of respect, I just, you know, slowed down my movement. As far as the fire goes, it's actually just a lighter and hairspray. I never got to do that when I was little. I was always interested in like being that kid who liked fire and burning things. And so that was my moment to do that. And yeah, it was just something fun I've always wanted to do. I know I wouldn't be able to do fire on stage. So I was like, okay, I'll do it outside at least. So it's really as fun. for me, but that symbolism of fire, I just believe fire is also another place where rebirth happens. There's a lot of destruction from fire, but I also just, in my own personal way, I think fire and destruction is beautiful. So I wanted to share that with the world there, because it was all about sort of the liquid moment of a virus and like this sort of aquatic way. So I wanted to do the opposite of that with presenting fire.
Yeah, just one last point. I saw the fire as a sort of a connection to Joan Didion and her point about the only thing that connects Los Angelinos are the earthquakes and fires. And I found that really profound because, you know, again, we don't know our next door neighbor until there's an earthquake. And, you know, it's like disaster breeds comfort. And anyway, I took that as a sort of connection to Joan Didion. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we have a question in the chat, and it comes from, well, back to what Eric was just saying. There's so many notions we could project on the performance. And I was there when he was preparing for it, but it strikes me as so original and so different from what I expected, right? So I'm surprised, and I was there scouting and talking to Austin before he actually mounted the performance. So the fire was a surprise to me. Ruben Ulysses is a good friend of ours. I mean, Austin knows him, and I certainly do. And his question is, can you talk about the whys of why you transitioned into the Heelys for the later part of the performance?
Yes. So going back to the hairspray and the lighter situation as being a kid, I grew up wanting Heelys so bad, and it wasn't until I was in LA and I went to a Goodwill and found a pair of Heelys that so happened to be my size, 10 and a half. So that was amazing. And so I've always wanted to do that. But most of my works, there's a changing element where I'm changing the costume or changing my shoes, and shoes have been something that I've worked with a lot. And so the changing of the boots to Heelys was just allowing the second half of the movement to be free and just to honestly just have fun. Because I did a lot of walking, and then I felt like, you know, what's the next thing you could do, you know, is to skate. And so it was just that moment to have fun. And be that kid, because I always have a youthful sense of movement approach. So the Heelys is just that, and also it allowed me to see the cars more. So the Heelys is just a contrast between the sort of hard beginning of the boots, the combat boots that I was wearing, to something kind of, you know, fun.
We have two hands up.
Yeah.
Mohammed and
Oh,
then
I don't see them. Wait, where are they?
Mohammed and then Ingelo.
Okay.
Ingelo, would you mind if I went first?
Yeah, please.
Thank
All
you.
you.
Thank you. Austin, that was an amazing performance. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
I had a question about the track. So when you were dancing, were you dancing, well, it's sort of a two-part question. Were you dancing to the track or was it added later? And also, how do you pick a track for a dance like this?
So I was dancing, so it's edited exactly how the performance happened. And so the classical track, when I think of classical music, I think of like a sterile environment. And so that's immediately what I thought about for this piece. And I haven't done a classical song as far as like a public performance yet. So I kind of picked it off of like things I haven't done. And all of the steps and the walking in that first part was just, I was listening to the music from the car where you have the perspective of the camera. So the doors were open and we just had it blasting. So it was on the music for everything. And when I edited, it was just, you know, in sync as well. So and the second track is titled Stay Sane. So I just named the piece Stay Sane. And before lockdown, I had been listening to that song and that album by Pink Sifu. I just been listening to that song, and I've been listening to the classical song like over and over. How I pick music is just, it becomes my favorite song, you know, until I'm ready to perform it. So yeah, I just kind of those two songs felt like they were the same for a while. Like they were very complimentary for me. So I just kind of went with my gut and just made those two be the two tracks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess Ingelo, and I'm not sure if TK was raising a hand. Were you?
Yeah, there's Solomon has a hand up and TK has a hand
I'm
up.
so pathetic with this stuff, with this video game. Anyway, let's hear from everyone at the same time. Ingelo, please.
So let me just jump in. So thank you so much. What a gift today's performance was. And thank you, Rawson and Linda, for bringing this to us. So I'm an architect and I have a number of students here. And I have a question for you. What I loved so much about your piece is you just claimed a public street as your performance space. And so this notion of public space, and this is a discourse or conversation that our students have been having also, especially with the protests and what are these public spaces, who do these public spaces belong to? For example, freeways now have become a space of protest unique to Los Angeles, and you claim the street as your space. And I'd love to hear you sort of talk about that and why you chose this particular street and what it means to you.
Thank you so much. So I had been working at an immersive theater show called Cages downtown LA. And I had hit up the director and I had asked him, hey, I want to do this performance. And I kind of wanted to go in a more safe way, just in case someone were to stop us, I would say, oh, I work here, too far, not too far from the site. And so when Rawson and I left, went to the space to check it out, we started at where the theater show houses the performances, and then we just walked around. So in the beginning of the film, that alleyway is basically would be our, where we would load in and we would park for that show. So if it was still familiar, but the other side of it, I didn't really, where the performance happens, I didn't really go over there until we started scouting. So as far as choosing the space, I wanted to also just have some reference just in case I was stopped and told like, hey, you can't really be here. I would have been like, hey, I work, right there, because we had stopped performing, obviously, because of everything. So that space, as far as guerrilla style performing goes, I wanted, just to do it and then, just leave. And that's why, I get in the car and go. So I felt like I don't really own it as well as far as the space, I'm just kind of, it feels like a park to me, like parking a car situation or, just running into the grocery store. That's kind of how I see it. So I don't really feel like the performance personally is me owning up to the space, but just kind of showing up and just leaving. That's kind of the culture where I'm from. And, we go to the gas station and, we might play music or we're dancing, we're making videos at these public spaces and then we go. But we might not, see that to be really like, oh, we own this or this is ours. So I kind of felt like that was connected just to something I'm used to, just pulling up into a parking lot and doing something and just going. So that was mostly how I saw the space. And I didn't really feel like it was too much of a statement as far as, protests go. What I was saying is just the moment in itself. And then, it's gone because, it's a loading dock. There was a 18-wheeler. So they kind of have more of a statement that stays there. But for me, it's just a come and go. That's how I felt mostly about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's hear from TK and then Solomon, I guess.
Solomon raised his hand before me. Did you want to go ahead?
That's okay. After you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks, y'all. I'm so happy to be back again and a witness to this. My question has to do with how the performance felt. There's so much. So you hear when people talk about their stories of the pandemic, their experiences moving through cities after people didn't go outside anymore, after there were curfews and stay-at-home orders. The film really beautifully captures that emptiness of urban space, and to see you transition from being on solid foot to these Heelys I'm curious how that felt to move through that vapid, empty space like that. What did that feel like for you? And what does that add to, I guess, if you have an opinion, the performance?
Yes. Just quickly, wearing Heelys is fun, like I'm glad I have them now because I feel like if I would have had them earlier, like I said before, I might not have chosen them. They might have gotten out of style, but the free and fun that I felt, wearing them was, you know, maybe at the moment something I didn't feel before the performance. I try to bring a lot of my life into the movement or just, make it to be a journal entry as far as movement can do. So I might not have felt like free and flowing and feeling like, the joy that it is to, skate or wear Heelys. So I think as far as the feeling goes with the performance, it was just, I felt like the movement that I presented with a lot of the fire stuff and the waving, this was happening a lot. It was just, how can I show that kind of on the lower half of my body with wearing a shoe of sort, or that can make me sort of travel more. But the feeling of it, and as far as the pandemic and everything, I also just wanted us to like not think about it. It was very stressful from March to April. I originally wanted to do it right the same, like maybe following days where it was like March the 13th, where a lot of us were getting emails and stuff of like, what was going on. So I wanted to do it first then, when we knew, but I waited until a month after. So it was honestly an escape from it, how I was seeing it, like, hey, let's just see stuff right now, I'll do this performance and then, maybe we're not thinking about it too much. But to be honest, I didn't really feel much when I was performing. I was just kind of allowing the downloads and the moment to really be everything. And that's usually how I perform anyways. I'm just sort of empty. That's why I wear a mask in this way. It's just trying to take myself out of it, and so that people can kind of put their feeling in it. And I like to do small glimpses of, childhood or youthful things. Maybe, for me it was Heelys, but someone could have thought of like skateboards or skates or, a bike. So that's kind of how I felt it. More so post than during. I have to watch it and be like, oh, okay, that's what was going on. And how do I feel about that? I'm more of a post feeling kind of person. Thank you so much, TK.
Let's go to Solomon. Of course, I have a million things to say because I've also seen you perform other times. And so, but just I'd rather hear from Solomon and everyone else.
Well, I'll make it quick. Thanks, Rawson. And thank you very much, Austin. A couple things. I had actually grew up about an hour from Smyrna. I don't know how much time you spent there, or if that has any influence. And everybody's asking about space, so maybe I'll roll back on what I was thinking about space. Although I do think there's this great irony, like, the town I grew up in Rome, Georgia, there's only like 40,000 people there or something. But, it was easy to get lost or be alone. And it's ironic, I think, I've only been in LA for like 3 years, but it's really hard to find privacy in this sprawling metropolis, I feel like. And I was reading in Rawson's article about y'all scouting locations and it being a little challenging to find a spot where you felt like where there weren't people there, right? Whether it's cameras or folks who were there or police or whatever it is, right? But I'm curious, well, one, I wanted to thank you for doing this. It's been strange to me, I guess, strange and not strange, that there seems to be a dearth of performances that have been undertaken in the midst of this pandemic that both refer to the pandemic but aren't about the pandemic. Like, it's really weird. I feel like all the entertainment I'm taking in, some of which has been produced, over the course of the past year, nobody's wearing masks, there's no reference to it. It's almost as if, we've sort of decided we're not going to talk about this in our art. And I feel like it's so important right now, like in times of emergency, art is usually the first thing to go out the window, our governments under the best of circumstances are like, we need to be, it's guns, it's military, it's protection, it's safety, all this all the time. And, you know, art is funded begrudgingly under the best of circumstances, never mind now, right? So I'm grateful for this, and I think it'll be a wonderful thing for us to have as hopefully we move out of this. I wondered what motivated you to do it? Like, how were you compelled to undertake this in spite of the difficulties involved with it, and in spite of the fact that we're in sort of a barren landscape right now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you so much. Immediately, like when we were told to stay inside, I was like, nope, I'm going outside. You know, the performances ended. I was like, nope, I'm gonna totally perform now. And you know, I was, you know, usually in the early of the year, you know, we're doing all the prep for the year. I had worked on some choreography to come to Atlanta and perform a new piece I had made. And I'm like, no, I was doing all of this work, and I was like, I have to perform. So my first initiation was just like, no, I have to figure out how I'm going to get out and dance or do something, because, you know, it was that moment for me, like where everyone, the year was about to start. Usually that's what happens for spring. And so my first thing was like, no, people have to see dance, or people have to see something. So that was my initiation. And I felt like it wasn't really about, you know, me. And most of my performances, when I don't show my bare face, is I'm trying to just have it be the moment. So I was like, nah, people want to see some art. Everyone's stressed or anxious. Like, there has to be something that people can see. So that was kind of the set of initiatives I had, was just like, no, we all can't like just be at home, you know, not seeing art or flash really. So that was kind of my initiation to just do it, because I was like, that means we won't see anything for a while. Or if someone, you know, steps up, and I just took that initiative.
We have a question in the chat from Nicholas. Do you want to read it out, Nicholas, or should I just read it out for you?
I have a question after Nicholas.
Okay.
I could read it if you, yeah, I could read it, that's fine. By the way, Austin, thank you for the performance. I thought it was really inspiring and motivating, and I'm just gonna get right to reading the question. So I tend to make connections between all art forms within the realm of architecture. As an architecture student, during your performance, I was entertaining the ideas of the human body and movement of dance, transitioning into the movement and flow of an architectural space. Have you ever thought about dance as a form of architecture? And would you ever collaborate with an architectural designer to conceptualize a new public space through dance?
Okay, so I just started smiling ear to ear, because I love architecture, but it's just so overwhelming and amazing. I'm like, wow. First, I see the body as a home or an architectural space. So I think about it just kind of connecting all other art forms. That's something that I really love about my practice, is I'm trying to see how, okay, architecture is saying this, you know, painting and ceramics is saying this. I'm like, okay, but we also say it like this in dance. So I think about, you know, the other spaces as well. But, you know, first and foremost, you know, the body is, you know, for me is my house. You know, that's the one I got first. And how can I, you know, maybe show a different style of house, or, you know, architectural space, and I use my body as, you know, kind of, you know, a derivative of architecture or something like that. And I would love to collaborate in architecture in some way, you know, really challenge myself as a choreographer and a dancer to see where that space exists. And I'm more interested, you know, mostly not just dancing in an architectural space, but seeing how like we can work together or against, you know. I think we've seen, you know, dance in a really cool place before. Like, you know, I want to go and challenge and learn from a different, you know, spot. So I'm totally interested. Let me read the rest of the question. I hope that was a good answer or okay answer. But designer to conceptualize and yes. One thing I love, like my favorite architectural piece, I guess, would be like a spiral staircase. I think that was so crazy, and I just think of like a dancer spinning, you know, every time I see them. And architecture is something that I would love to learn from, so I'm totally open.
Can I just quickly interrupt and remind everybody that Austin has worked with Solange, but that was a heavily architecturally driven project. So I'm going to drop the link, and you could actually watch the movie on the Hammer's website. It's a cube, right? It's the Metatronia cube, and Austin was one of the dancers. You'll recognize him, the best one, of course, as far as I'm concerned. I went to the screening at the Hammer Museum where Solange was presenting, and she was being interviewed, and then Austin was also with me in the audience. So I'm a lucky bastard. Let me just drop that link, and in the meantime, we could hear from Noor.
Hi, Austin. That was fantastic. While you were dancing, there was this one moment where you sort of went behind the other cars, and I almost moved my head to see where you were going. It was so tight against the frame. But it was the semi-trailer truck that took up such a big amount of space in the frame. I'm totally projecting right now, but during the quarantine, while all of us are stuck at home, and now more than ever, we're ordering our goods and everything from the internet, and it's these semi-trailer trucks that are moving products from one end of the country to the other. Some of the only things that are still in motion. So I could imagine. I can imagine you moving this thing, and your movements are something that's being projected out of your mind while you're sort of stuck in that closed little space. But that's obviously me projecting. So I was wondering if there was any significance for the semi-trailer to be there, and or if it was an aesthetic choice, because I think your jacket was almost the same color as the truck too. So I was just wondering what's happening there.
Thank you so much. And thank you also, Nicholas, too, for your question. When Rawson and I were scouting out spots, we initially wanted to perform where the semi-truck was. And so when I walked in, there's this processional kind of situation in the beginning of the film. The semi-truck was a surprise. And so it was just really cool because I'm wearing this cloud print from a friend of mine's brand, and it just worked out. While I saw the semi, I'm like, wait, what? So I kind of knew. I really, really cherished the synchronicity. So I was like, wait, I guess I was supposed to do it this day. It was on, I believe. So I had a thought, like, is someone in there? But no one was. So it really worked out. I was just like, all right, so it's there. And then it also becomes, another dancer, character, person, interacting with the environment. So I was just kind of grateful it was there. I wasn't really upset because I originally wanted to perform in that space where the semi-truck was, but I didn't check it before I got there or started. And, it was a surprise to me just as much as, when you first see it.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
All right, we're out of the official 1 hour, but we could, of course, take another question or two if you guys want to stick around. I have a million things to say and ask, as I mentioned earlier. My heart would have exploded if I had been there and seen that truck, Austin. So the equanimity and grace with which you just, rope it into the performance, and then that serendipity of the colors matching perfectly. It's astonishing. I mean, pure beauty. Did we have any other questions or comments? I mean, someone asked about the actual performance, and I think, Austin, we are at liberty of sharing that link, right? You wouldn't mind that people get the...
Oh, yeah, no worries. Yeah, anyone can totally see the performance. If it's easier, it's on my website, but we can drop the link. Yeah, anyone can have it.
Well, we also shared your website, yes. So you guys could watch it again and again and again. We're losing some, audience members. So I guess, if there's no other questions, my sort of final words on this is, well, first of all, I'm so grateful to be your friend and to have been able to experience your work. I was just reading another friend's work, John Gibson, who's a philosopher of poetry, and he said something that resonated with me. He said, poetry is authoritative without being didactic. It's not paternalistic. It's not forcing anything on you, but it has authority. And I feel that dance and poetry are unique that way among the arts, because there's such authority and such wingspan to everything you do. And, you know, I cry about once a year, and it's usually about 2 hours after an Austin Rich performance. It's deeply resonant stuff. And you've seen the video version of it, but obviously powerful enough to continue resonating. Thank you everyone for showing up for this, showing up for Austin. Please follow his work. He is going places. You book a ticket, no matter how much it costs next time you could see him live, because it's astonishing. I've seen a performance of him in a laundromat, actually in the laundry room of a building in South Central that he was living in at that point. And again, it's one of the best things I've ever seen. So strongly recommended. Thank you, everyone.
And I put his website up in the chat in case you need it, but it's really simple. It's austinrich.com. So, and the whole thing,
Georgia.
Right, Austin, the whole entire, we showed actually a clip to you guys, but the whole thing is 17 minutes. And yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing's on there. Thank you all, everyone. I'm seeing some messages come in the chat. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you, Linda, and thank you, Rawson, and everyone for their time. You know, it's grateful to share and, you know, hear thoughts. Because it felt like so distant, even though we're honestly coming up at a year, you know, of the performance and of most things as well. So.
Well, actually, yesterday, I think, Rawson, didn't you say this? Yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the first scouting trip.
Yeah.
So it's like an almost perfect loop.
Yes, and right, yeah. So I would just only say to look out for another performance like that coming up, because it's been almost, you know, a year of the actual meeting time, but definitely a year of the project starting. So I just want to thank you all for being here and, you know, sharing this.
All right.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I guess I should leave.
Well,
I wasn't sure.
We could just gently ask my sister to leave the
Now
room.
can we have a drink?
Please. Yeah, do it.
Oh, too much nerves.
I was definitely nervous. I was shaking, but thanks.
Why would you be shaking? I mean, you're such a natural.
No, people really appreciated it. I mean, you can tell that they had a genuine response. So thank you.
Don't be intimidated by
Absolutely.
my sister in the corner of the screen.
All good. Hi, sister. No, I'm, like I said, I'm grateful. It was really cool to share. Hi. Yeah, it was cool to share. Earlier, I only did like a private screening situation.
There's the other part of the genetic pool. So Vanny, this is Austin, who's a good friend of mine, obviously. And then Linda and I worked together at the university, and she helped co-organize this. And Vanny's in Brooklyn, in her kitchen, from what I can see. Yeah.
So nice to meet you all. It was so much fun to listen to all of that. Oh, what a beautiful world. I'm very jealous. So thank you for tonight, for inviting me, Ross. I really appreciate that. It was absolutely very, very amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
It inspired me. Like, I love the music also. It was so beautiful. And I need to watch it again because I was driving as I was listening and watching. So I just, you know, it's a New York moment. You do all kinds of things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to watch it again and pay attention. Love the feeling, you know, it's a feeling. So